get more into, like, let's say you've got an interview lined up. How do you start preparing for that? Nikki, let's start with you.
First you have a panic attack because you're like, oh my God, I have to, really sell myself. Either, sometimes they're on Zoom, so you just have to do a really good presentation, and then you have to do these really awkward Zoom interviews, or you go in person, which is almost a little bit scarier because you're just like immersed in their environment. Um, Once I knew I was looking for a postdoc, I had already planned on giving sort of like a mock job talk at our like program seminar, so that I would sort of like, put together something that would be easily digestible for a wide audience, but would still sell what I did. And so I got a little sort of like run through on that, and then just kept adjusting from there, made sure that whatever I presented was applicable to whatever lab or person I was presenting to when it came to interviews. And then just thinking about also like, what do you want? Because they're going to ask you that, like, what are you looking for? And what do you want to get out of this? And also knowing what they do and making sure you say, I know you know how to do this, and I would like to know how to do this. And then just, it's a lot of mental preparation, I would say. And just making sure like you're confident in yourself, because like you do have to sell yourself, and you do have to be amicable in whatever sort of casual or formal sort of interview that you're having.
Perfect. Salahuddin, what would you suggest for preparing?
So, as Nikki mentioned, so it's always going to be followed with a kind of like a presentation and meeting the students. So you should basically make yourself really comfortable that you will be talking to unknown people whom you didn't know, out of your comfort zone, and they may ask you questions from here and there just to see like what's your resilience looks like. So it's not gonna be an easy interview, I would say. It's just gonna be like something which you were not really prepared. So I would definitely wanna say that have a good night's sleep. You have booked all your PhD, so it's basically like 3 to 4 years. You don't have to cram on last day of the presentation, making slides and all of that. That's all in your head. Just having a 5 to 10 slide deck, that will definitely sail you through. And more importantly, what you have to start thinking when you're looking for a postdoc is if you're doing something in a behavioral lab where you're working for mice, and one of my colleagues has transitioned into a clinical research, because you can always be in a comfort zone where you are working with mice and now you're working with rats. But I would definitely say that if you're doing a preclinical, venture out for clinical ways of understanding the research. So that may basically make you more of kind of like a holistic person where you have best of both preclinical and clinical for a translational perspective of the research. So things we have to start thinking about. Thank you.
Great. And Connor.
Yeah, so I mean, you two have said a lot, so I'll try not to repeat a lot of it. But what I always think is that people kind of tend to go into these interviews thinking that they have to be exactly what the person is looking for, exactly what the person is themselves. In that, my first postdoc, I went from social neuroscience into pharmacology, into a PTSD research and cannabinoids, and it was nothing I'd ever done before. But I knew the reason I was interviewed for that job was because of the skills I had in research, and there were particular methods that Leah wanted to use that made me a more suitable candidate than knowing all about the background of the literature. Same with Harriet. I then went into MDMA and methamphetamine research, but it was because I did EEG that made me the attractive candidate. So I think being as authentic yourself as possible is kind of the best thing to do in these situations, because you're selling yourself in the role that you can do, not who you think you should be. So you just need to be as honest as possible about what you can and can't do, and what makes you the best candidate for the position, and how you can help that PI to get the research done. Which hopefully has worked successfully for me, because I keep going to different fields. But yeah, I'm learning a lot, so I'm enjoying it a lot. But yeah, I've been very honest from the start with what I know and what I don't know about the field, and actually what research skills I can help with.
Yeah, all of you hit on really important points, especially what you just said, Connor. It was like, what do you bring to this position that's unique? Because you're going to be learning a lot, like a postdoc as a trainee, but you also have background and skills that you could bring to this lab and look at those questions in a new way. So I really like what you just said. I want to talk more about like, how do you select a postdoc? And Salahuddin, you mentioned potentially getting a more well-rounded experience if you did preclinical and now you want to do clinical research. So how do you decide what position is right for you? Like what skills you'll be gaining? What kind of things do you look for in a position? So Salahuddin, let's start with you.
Okay, so again, rewinding myself back a bit, if I have to go and train my younger self before getting into a postdoc, couple of things which I always look forward is postdoc is a temporary position. So it's going to be like anywhere between 2 to 5 years or wherever you want to draw a line. So one thing which I really want to basically make myself understand and give this message out and loud is you will have to venture out of permanent position at some point in your career. And what it takes for you to get that permanent position, like if you're going to go into an industry, what kind of skills they are looking for? Is it like a clinical pharmacokinetics, or is it like just basic pharmacology, or is it something related to behavior neuroscience? Is it something which is kind of like UX researcher roles? Any of those. So if you're kind of eyeing that, use postdoc as kind of like a bridge to learn those skills. It can be like something where you're very fascinated about research, but finally, one thing which can come back and haunting you would be you just wasted your time in postdoc where you may have helped the opposite person, the PI, but more importantly, what you didn't really learn from this particular experience is uh, the additional skills for you to kind of go and get a full-time job. And if you don't do that, what happens is you have to go and do an additional postdoc from this lab to another lab, where now you will realize that you need that additional skills. And then that way you're just kind of like training yourself again and again in different positions. And that's fine too, given that you don't have a very heavy backpack. But people who just want to get into full-time roles sooner and later, definitely things you have to understand is learning those skills and moving ahead in the game. Thank you.
Perfect. How about you, Nikki?
My focus for, my postdoc was I wanted to basically enter a new field. I work with PTSD and cannabinoids, and I love it a whole lot. But my passion is more in the realm of substance use. So I was making sure that I could identify somebody who had that angle that I was looking for, but also still had these methods that I was interested in. So like fMRI, some behavioral aspects. But because I like those methods so much, I just want a much deeper understanding of them. So like being able to code for like processing data and stuff like that. So identifying somebody who could teach me those skills, or knew somebody that could teach me those skills so that I could feel comfortable for my next step. So as an independent researcher, running my own lab and doing those, similar analyses, basically.
Awesome. Connor, how do you choose a postdoc?
Oh, well, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different route because, like I said, I've never really picked a postdoc based on the topic necessarily, but usually about who I'm working with and what I can learn in those positions, which is what everyone said. But I've lost my train of thought about what I was going to say. But I think that, yeah, it's really important that you consider who's already working there, who's been working there. And I've found it very, very useful to get the insight of people who have worked with the PI in the past. This is both at a PhD level, an undergraduate level, research assistant level, all these different hierarchies that there are in these systems. It's important to understand how the PI is with all of these different people and to get a real personal perspective on how they are as a PI, because that's kind of the best way. They may have all these skills, but if they're not a good teacher, or if you're not going to get the support that you need in that situation, then what's the point? You're going to waste a few years of your life doing a project that may be interesting, but you're going to be miserable because you're not going to enjoy the time that you're there, or learn what you want to learn, or learn how you're going to be a PI yourself. because ultimately that's going to be your goal, is that after your postdoc, you're either, you're going to go into industry sometimes, or maybe you will go and open your own lab, which hopefully will be my next stage. But I feel like I've done 2 half postdocs at the moment. I want to do a full postdoc where I'll get to the stage where I know who I want to be and what I want to do. So knowing what the people are like personally is a real good deciding factor of where to go, I think.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up too. And I completely agree that it's not about the topic per se. Like everyone's all worried that like, oh, this isn't exactly what I want to study for the rest of my life. But like, you don't want to be a clone of the PI, as we mentioned earlier. It's more about the skills and the experiences that you can take to run your own lab one day if you want to go into academia. And definitely, I mean, it's a training environment. So you want to look at how the mentor works. Is it a good environment for you? Does it work with your mentorship style or your mentor?